The Echo in the Silence, Chapter 1, The Ghost of 1974. Emily's life in the sun-drenched suburbs of Sarasota, Florida, was a meticulously tended garden of routine and quiet contentment. At 75, she had cultivated a peaceful existence, marked by daily walks, gentle hobbies, and the comforting presence of her husband, Tom, and visits from her son, David. Yet, beneath the tranquil surface, a persistent, unhealed wound festered, a scar left by the summer of 1974. That was the year Sarah vanished. Her younger sister, Sarah, a vibrant, artistic rebel, perpetually at odds with their strict conservative parents in their small North Carolina town. Sarah, with her wild dreams of escaping their rigid confines, her disdain for convention, and a spirit that simply refused to be tamed. At 16, she had simply disappeared without a trace. No note, no clues, no last goodbye. The local police, led by a diligent but ultimately frustrated Detective Samuel Thorne, had conducted a thorough investigation, but it always led to a dead end. Foul play was suspected, then dismissed, then speculated upon again, but never proven. Sarah was just gone. Their parents, broken by the loss, had gone to their graves carrying the heavy weight of an unresolved grief, never truly coming to terms with their vanished daughter. Emily, the dutiful older sister, had carried her own unique burden, the crushing weight of guilt. They had argued fiercely, bitterly, the night before Sarah disappeared. A petty disagreement, fueled by teenage frustrations, but the last words they'd exchanged had been harsh, angry. Sarah became a phantom, a whisper in the wind, an eternal ache in Emily's heart. Her absence was a constant, dull throb, a wound that refused to heal. The decades passed, blurring the sharp edges of memory, but never truly erasing the pain. Sarah remained frozen in time, forever 16, a photograph on Emily's mantelpiece, a ghost in the silence of their family's unspoken grief. Then one quiet evening in early 2025, the phone rang. An unfamiliar number flashed on the caller ID. Emily, wary of telemarketers, almost let it go to voicemail. But something, an inexplicable intuition, made her answer. "Hello?" she said, her voice tinged with the slight weariness of age. A woman's voice, slightly hoarse, but with an uncanny, chillingly familiar inflection, spoke. "Emily? It's Sarah. I'm back." Emily froze. The receiver felt like a block of ice against her ear. A cold, visceral terror mingled with an impossible surge of disbelief. It couldn't be. This was a cruel joke, a scam, some twisted form of identity theft. "Who is this?" she demanded, her voice sharp with suspicion. "This isn't funny." The voice on the other end chuckled, a low, throaty sound that resonated with a distant, terrifying familiarity. "Lizzie's lemonade stand, Em. Remember how we always called it that, even when we were just selling mud pies in the backyard?" Emily's breath hitched. Lizzie's lemonade stand. A secret childhood game, a private language spoken only by them. The memory, long buried, surfaced with a painful clarity. No one, absolutely no one, knew about Lizzie's lemonade stand. No one but Sarah and Emily. Her world, a meticulously tended garden of routine and peace, imploded. The comfortable quiet of her home was shattered by the echo of a voice from the past. A ghost had called, and she said, "I'm back." The silence of decades was broken, not by a gentle whisper, but by a thunderous, impossible return, promising to unravel every certainty Emily had ever known. Chapter 2, The Face in the Screen. The receiver trembled in Emily's hand. "Lizzie's lemonade stand," she whispered. The words choked with emotion. No, it can't be. Her mind raced, grasping for logic, for a rational explanation. This was impossible. Sarah was gone. For 51 years. "It is, Em," the voice replied, softer now, tinged with a weariness that Emily could almost feel. "I know this is a lot. More than a lot, but I needed you to know. It's me." Emily's husband, Tom, hearing the tremor in her voice, came into the living room, his brow furrowed with concern. "Who is it, Em? What's wrong?" Emily could only shake her head, tears streaming down her face. She says it's Sarah." Tom, ever the pragmatist, immediately took the phone. His skepticism was palpable. "Look, lady, I don't know who you are, but this isn't funny. My wife's sister died decades ago. Stop this." "Tom, please." Emily pleaded, grabbing the phone back. "She knows things no one else could know." The woman on the phone, the voice of Sarah, patiently responded. "Tell Tom. Tell him about the chipped teacup, the one you broke when we were kids and blamed on the cat. And Dad nearly grounded you for a month, but I confessed." Emily's eyes widened. The chipped teacup, a tiny, insignificant memory, long forgotten, yet perfectly recalled. Tom looked at her, his skepticism wavering, replaced by a flicker of shocked disbelief. "Okay," Tom said, his voice now subdued. "Okay. Let's do a video call. Now." Minutes later, Emily and Tom sat before Emily's tablet, their hearts pounding. The screen flickered. Then a face appeared, an older woman. Lines etched around her eyes, silver streaks in her once wild hair. Her face was weathered, but there was something in the set of her jaw, the curve of her lips, the unique tilt of her head that made Emily gasp. And her eyes. Those eyes, a startling shade of hazel, were undeniably Sarah's. The eyes of the rebellious teenager, now softened by age, yet still holding that familiar spark. "Hello, Emily," the woman said, her voice still a little hoarse, but warm, unmistakably Sarah's. "You look exactly as I remember you, only more beautiful." Emily stared, speechless. Sarah's voice, Sarah's eyes. She asked more questions, intimate details of their childhood, secrets shared only between sisters. Sarah answered them all, easily, precisely. The DNA test was a formality now, a confirmation of what her heart, terrified and disbelieving, was slowly beginning to accept. It was her sister. Her lost sister, back from the dead. "Why, Sarah? Why now? Why? Why didn't you ever call? Where have you been?" Emily's questions tumbled out, a torrent of 51 years of bottled-up grief and bewilderment. Sarah sighed, a deep, weary sound. "It's a long story, Em. A painful one. And it's complicated. I couldn't. Not then. And later. It felt like too much. Too much shame. Too much fear." She hesitated, her gaze drifting. "I wasn't Sarah. Not for a very long time. I was Miranda. And I built a whole other life, far away from all of that." The revelation of Miranda and a whole other life compounded the shock. This wasn't just a miraculous return. It was the unfolding of a mystery, a narrative of a hidden existence. Emily felt a dizzying mix of joy, relief, confusion, and a new, unsettling sense of betrayal. Her sister had been alive all these years, and she had simply chosen to stay gone. The face in the screen was not just a reunion. It solidified the bewildering reality that a ghost from 1974 had walked back into Emily's life. They agreed to meet. Not in North Carolina, the town that held so many painful memories, but in a neutral space, a quiet, seaside town in South Carolina. Emily, accompanied by Tom and David, who now, despite his initial skepticism, was as consumed by curiosity as his mother, waited with a knot of anxiety in her stomach. Sarah, or Miranda, as she now introduced herself, arrived. She was dressed simply, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, but her hazel eyes still held the rebellious spark Emily remembered. The initial embraces were awkward, tinged with disbelief and decades of unsaid words. Emily scrutinized her, searching for the spirited teenager she had lost. She found fragments, echoes, but also a woman hardened by time, marked by experiences Emily couldn't even begin to fathom. "Tell me everything, Sarah," Emily pleaded, her voice trembling. "From the beginning, why did you leave? And why did you never come back?" Sarah hesitated, her gaze distant, fixed on the ocean waves. "It's not a simple story, Em. I didn't just run away from Mom and Dad's rules. I ran from something much bigger, something terrifying that happened that night." She spoke of the events leading up to her disappearance. It wasn't just a petty argument with their parents. It was a culmination of growing fear. Sarah had been secretly dating a boy named Mark, a few years older, from a rougher part of town. Their parents would have never approved. The night she disappeared, she had gone to meet Mark. "We were just talking," Sarah whispered, her voice strained. He was upset. He'd seen something bad. She described how Mark had witnessed a powerful local businessman, Mr. Harrison, known for his philanthropic facade but rumored connections to illicit activities, dispose of something suspicious in the woods near their property. He swore he saw Mr. Harrison burying a large, heavy bag, Sarah recounted, her eyes wide with a residual fear. "He told me he was going to go back to find out what it was, and he told me to wait for him by the old oak tree. I waited, Emily, for hours, but he never came. And then I heard it, a single gunshot from the woods, not far from where he was. Panic had seized her. She fled, convinced that Mr. Harrison, a man with significant power in their small town, had silenced Mark. I thought he knew I was with Mark. I thought he would come for me next. I was just a kid, Em. I was terrified. I ran as far as I could, with the few dollars I had saved. I didn't know what else to do." She corroborated her story with details of her journey, riding freight trains, hitchhiking, sleeping in abandoned barns, until she stumbled upon a small, isolated commune in the redwood forests of Oregon. "They were kind," Sarah explained. "They lived off the grid, without documents, without contact with the outside world. They gave me a new name, Miranda, and a new life. I stayed there for years. I truly believed I was safe there, hidden from the man who killed Mark. And I believed if I contacted you, I would lead him to you." Emily listened, horrified. The familiar story of teenage rebellion was replaced by a chilling narrative of murder, fear, and a desperate flight for survival. This was not the simple runaway she had grieved. This was a victim, a survivor, haunted by a past she couldn't escape. David, pragmatic as ever, suggested they contact Samuel Thorne, the retired detective who had handled Sarah's missing person case. Thorne, now in his late 80s, his mind still sharp, remembered the Miller case with a heavy heart. "Sarah Miller," he mused over the phone. "I always felt there was more to that. Never felt right. We questioned Mr. Harrison, of course. He was powerful, very influential, had an ironclad alibi, but there was always something. We couldn't prove it. He mentioned how the Harrison family had effectively shut down further inquiries, using their influence to ensure a quick closure to the missing person case, labeling it a simple runaway. He even recalled a vague rumor of a local boy, Mark, who had also disappeared around the same time. But his disappearance was never officially linked to Sarah's. Emily felt a sickening lurch. The missing pieces were falling into place, forming a picture far darker than she could have imagined. Sarah wasn't just a ghost from her past. She was a survivor of a hidden crime, an echo in the silence of a town that had wanted to forget. Chapter 4. The Commune and the Canvas. Sarah, now fully embracing her dual identity as Sarah Miranda, continued to unravel the intricate tapestry of her lost years. The fear of Mr. Harrison had been a constant, chilling companion, pushing her deeper into the anonymity of the commune. She spoke of the Oregon redwood forests, the scent of damp earth and pine, the communal meals, the shared belief in a simpler, purer life. They taught me how to live off the land, Em. Sarah recounted, her voice softer now, tinged with a nostalgic warmth. How to grow food, build shelter, find solace in nature. It was hard, but it was safe. No names, no records, no past. I was just Miranda. In the commune, she met Maya, a gentle, artistic woman who became a mentor and a friend. Maya, contacted by Emily and David, confirmed Sarah's story. Miranda was always guarded, Maya explained, but she was a good soul. She lived in constant fear of discovery. We all respected her need for privacy. It was a haven for those seeking to disappear, for whatever reasons. It was also in the commune that Sarah found her voice through art. Maya encouraged me to paint, Sarah said, her eyes lighting up for the first time with a genuine spark of joy. To pour out all the fear, all the loss, all the unspoken stories onto the canvas. It was my therapy, my lifeline. She began painting abstract, vibrant pieces, depicting the wildness of nature and the hidden depths of human emotion. After nearly 2 decades in the commune, a new desire stirred within Sarah, a yearning for a life beyond the shadows, a family of her own. I met Jake, Em, she said, a tender smile touching her lips. He was a fellow artist, but from the outside world. He understood my past, my fear. He never pushed. He just loved. Together, they decided to integrate back into society, a perilous journey of creating new identities, forging new documents, and building a life from scratch. It wasn't easy, Jake, a kind-faced man with a quiet strength, confirmed when Emily and David finally met him. We had to be meticulous, every detail, every story. It was exhausting, living a lie, but we were determined to live a normal life for our children. Yes, children. Sarah had 2 sons, now grown, unaware of their mother's true identity, raised under the name Miranda. This revelation hit Emily with another wave of complex emotions. Sarah had a family, a complete, full life she had chosen over her past. This was the painful truth. Sarah could have contacted them. After she and Jake established their new lives, after the immediate threat from Mr. Harrison had likely faded, he had died years ago, a quick search revealed. She had the means. Why, Sarah? Emily finally asked, her voice cracking. Why didn't you, after all these years? We grieved for you. Mom and Dad, they died heartbroken. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, raw and unashamed. Shame, Em. So much shame. Shame for running away. Shame for not being strong enough to face what I had seen. Shame for having lived a lie for so long. And fear. Fear that I would bring danger to your door. Fear that you would judge me, despise me, for abandoning you, for building a new life, and I was afraid of returning to the person I was, the rebellious teenager, the one who brought trouble. She swallowed hard. I was afraid you wouldn't accept the Miranda I had become, that you would only see the lost Sarah, and I couldn't bear to shatter your peace. You had built a good life, Emily. I was a ghost. It felt safer to stay that way. The weight of Sarah's words pressed down on Emily. It wasn't a simple story of abandonment, but a labyrinth of fear, shame, and a desperate desire for self-preservation. Sarah had built a new life, not out of malice, but out of a profound, misguided attempt to protect herself, and perhaps, in her own way, to protect Emily from the chaos of her hidden world. Chapter 5. The Unspoken Truths. The layers of Sarah's double life continued to peel away, revealing not only the pragmatic decisions born of fear, but also the emotional complexities that had kept her silent for so long. The conversation between the sisters grew more open, more raw, shedding the cautious politeness that had initially masked their pain. "I kept an eye on you, Em," Sarah confessed one afternoon, as they sat on Emily's sun-drenched patio in Sarasota. "Through old friends, online news articles, I knew you married Tom. I saw pictures of David when he graduated. I even knew when Mom and Dad passed away." Her voice was thick with emotion. "It tore me apart not to be there, not to say goodbye. But by then, the silence had become a habit, a cage I had built for myself." Emily, listening, felt a fresh surge of grief for their parents, for the years of unanswered questions, but also a growing understanding. "You were afraid of what they would say, weren't you?" Emily asked gently. "About Mark, about Mr. Harrison, about you running away." Sarah nodded, her gaze distant. "They were so strict, Em, so concerned with appearances. I just knew they would see me as a disgrace. And I was so young. I didn't know how to deal with any of it." It was then that Emily realized there was still an unvoiced truth, a missing piece in Sarah's narrative. "Sarah," Emily began, her voice tentative, "I remember that night, the night you disappeared. We had argued, about something silly, I think, but you seemed more upset than usual, even after that argument. Something else happened, didn't it? Something pushed you over the edge." Sarah stiffened. Her eyes, which had softened with reminiscence, hardened again. "You always were perceptive, Em." She took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Yes, something else. Something I never wanted to tell you. Something about Mom and Dad." Emily felt a chill. Had their parents, the paragons of virtue, harbored their own secrets? Sarah continued, her voice barely a whisper. "The afternoon before I left, I was in Mom's old sewing room, looking for some fabric scraps for a school project. I was rummaging through her old hope chest, and I found them. Letters. Old letters. From before she married Dad." Emily frowned. "Letters? From whom?" "From a man." Sarah's voice was tinged with disgust. "A married man. Mr. Abernathy, the town's mayor. They were intimate letters, Em, talking about a secret rendezvous, about being trapped in their marriages. And one letter, it was dated just a few months before Mom and Dad got married. It spoke of Mom being in a predicament, and Mr. Abernathy hinting at a solution. It implied something, Em, something awful. Something about Dad not being my true father, that he was just stepping in to cover up a scandal." Emily gasped, her mind reeling. Mr. Abernathy, the pillars of their community. Her mother, Martha, the epitome of dignity. The idea was abhorrent, yet the thought of her mother's youthful desperation, her quiet intensity, now seemed to fit. No, Emily whispered, shaking her head. That can't be. Dad was my father. He was yours too. I know, Em, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. Now I know. But then I was 16, angry, rebellious, and when I found those letters, it felt like the final betrayal. Everything I believed about our family, about Mom and Dad's perfect love, about their honesty, it all just crumbled. I felt like I was living in a lie. I confronted Mom. She denied it, of course. Said it was nonsense, old silly letters. But her face went pale. I saw the fear in her eyes. And later that night, after our argument, after I learned what Mark had seen, I just couldn't stay. I couldn't live in that house anymore. In that town, knowing all those secrets, I felt like everything was fake. It was the final push. The weight of this new, devastating truth settled over Emily. Their parents, too, had lived a double life. Not with malicious intent, perhaps, but certainly with a profound secret. The idealized narrative of their family was utterly shattered, replaced by a complex, messy, and deeply human story of fear, love, and sacrifice. The unspoken truths, decades old, were finally finding their voice, echoing through the silence of half a century, leaving Emily profoundly shaken, yet strangely, irrevocably free. Chapter 6: Threads of Forgiveness. The revelation of their mother's secret affair, long buried in the pages of forgotten letters, added another layer of complexity to the Miller family narrative. Emily sat in stunned silence, absorbing the implication. Not only had Sarah lived a double life, but so had their parents. The pillars of her childhood, the very foundation of her identity, had been built on a carefully constructed facade. So, you thought Dad was never your real father? Emily finally managed to ask, her voice thick with emotion. Sarah nodded, wiping tears from her face. At 16, with all the chaos of my own life, discovering those letters, it felt like the ultimate deception. It tainted everything. I saw Mom as a hypocrite, Dad as a dupe. It was a raw, visceral rejection of everything I thought our family stood for. I realize now how naive I was, how blind to the complexities of adult life, of love, of sacrifice. Emily, despite the fresh pain of this new revelation, found a surprising wellspring of understanding. She had, after all, just experienced her own identity crisis with Dr. West. Our parents, they lived in a different time, Sarah, Emily said, her voice softening. A time when such things were not just scandalous, but ruinous. For a woman especially. Mom must have been terrified. And Dad truly loved her. He must have chosen to accept it, to protect her, to protect us, just as he chose to protect us from the truth about Mr. Harrison. The parallel was stark. David, their steadfast father, had made a similar choice to protect. He had taken on the mantle of fatherhood for Evelyn, despite not being her biological parent, and he had helped Martha bury a secret that would have destroyed her reputation and family. His loyalty, his unwavering love, was even more profound than Emily had ever imagined. Slowly, painstakingly, the sisters began to weave together the threads of their unraveled lives. Emily shared her own recent discovery about Dr. West, her biological father, and Martha's explanation of his unwitting role in her conception. Sarah listened, her eyes wide. "So we both have complicated origins," she mused, a faint, ironic smile touching her lips. "I guess that makes us true sisters then, bound by secrets and by the love that held us through them." They spent days talking, sharing their separate lives, filling in the vast chasms of the last 51 years. Emily poured out her decades of grief, her guilt over their last argument, her longing for her lost sister. Sarah, in turn, expressed her shame, her fear, her deep regret for the pain she had caused, and her explanation for why she couldn't break the silence. She spoke of her love for Emily, a bond that had never truly severed, even through the years of separation. "I used to sit and imagine your life, Em," Sarah confessed, her voice tender. "I saw you as the one who got it right, the one who built a normal, happy family. I didn't want to disrupt that with my messy, complicated past." "There's no normal family, Sarah," Emily replied, a gentle smile. "Only human ones, full of secrets and love and mistakes and forgiveness." The long-held guilt and unspoken resentments between them began to dissipate, replaced by a profound, mutual understanding and a healing forgiveness. It wasn't a quick fix, but a gradual, deliberate process of rebuilding trust and intimacy. Sarah then introduced Emily to her other family, her husband, Jake, and their 2 grown sons, Michael and Daniel. Emily, with tears in her eyes, embraced them, accepting them as part of her expanded family. She saw the love and stability Sarah had built, a testament to her resilience and strength. Jake, a quiet, supportive man, spoke of Sarah's strength and determination, of how she had rebuilt her life with unwavering courage. The reunion culminated in a quiet ceremony at Emily's home in Sarasota. They scattered a small handful of girth from their North Carolina childhood home, brought by Emily alongside a handful of earth from Sarah's Oregon commune, symbolizing the blending of their 2 lives. It was a symbolic act of burying the past's burdens, not the past itself, and welcoming a future built on truth and love. The sisters, now truly reunited, understood that life was not a simple narrative of good versus evil or truth versus lies. It was a complex tapestry, woven with threads of choice, fear, love, sacrifice, and the profound, often unexpected ways people navigate their own unique journeys. Sarah, the rebel who ran, had returned not as a ghost, but as a fully realized woman, shaped by her experiences, finally ready to reclaim her place in Emily's life. And Emily, the steadfast older sister, had found a peace she never thought possible, a deeper understanding of family, and the enduring power of love that could bridge even the widest chasm of time and secrets. The echo in the silence had finally found its voice, singing a song of forgiveness, resilience, and the beautiful, messy truth of being human.